Welcome to The Torch, a podcast by the Riverside County Office of Education.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dominique Samario, the Chief Strategic Partnerships and Communications Officer at the Riverside County Office of Education. Here on The Torch, our goal is to highlight the issues our families and educators are talking about and explore them with community leaders. That's where our guest comes in. I'm truly excited and humbled to welcome a dynamic and passionate leader for our youth. Ramon Ramos is the founder and CEO of The Exception and president of the CBO Alliance for Riverside County. But more than those labels, he is a passionate advocate for building leaders and strengthening families. Ramon, welcome to The Torch.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dominique. Excited to be here with you guys. I love what you're doing and see your energy everywhere, always doing some great things. So happy to be here.
We are so happy to welcome you to the Riverside County Office of Education. However, full disclosure, we've worked together on some amazing projects, and that's why I've gotten to know a little bit about you, the amazing work that you're doing to truly change systems, like root causes, so we can change the trajectory for our students and families, right?
Yeah, that's the big work. I mean, upstream work like that, changing systems, it's oftentimes kind of unnoticed. It's not sexy because when you're downstream, you're saving someone that's in a river, and you say, this is who saved me. And you're like, they pulled me out. There's a hero. Right. But what about the person that prevented them from falling in the first place? And you don't even know that person exists, right? So a lot of times upstream work to me is the fun work. That's the systems change that actually changes thousands and thousands of people's lives and decades. But it's sexy to me. I love it. But other people may not, but yeah, I'm excited.
Well, and I think what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, though, because sometimes, and it's powerful and it's meaningful, but sometimes the people doing the work, they need to see that immediate cause and effect reaction to stay motivated, to keep doing what they're doing. And that's all valid, and we need that. But, if you don't mind maybe sharing a little bit about your background, because I've heard your story and it, brought me to tears. It's beautiful. It's powerful. And I wonder if maybe that's the reason why you are motivated by that work that says, I might not see the result right now. I might not see the result tomorrow, but I'm in it, right? Yeah. And I'm going to stay in it. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your story with us?
Yeah, I love that you said that because, it's about the systemic work, right? And my story of growing up in poverty, growing up to parents who were, drug addicts and gang members. And oftentimes what gets overlooked is that there are generations of trauma, right? So there are things happening. Like, for example, my mom, bless her soul for being such an amazing woman. And now she's a big part of my organization. But as a kid, wasn't often there for me, right? But you got to look back at what she went through, right. And how her two brothers were murdered and how, she experienced a lot of domestic violence and abuse. And, so when I look at my mom, I don't blame her for how I grew up. And we've had to have those conversations where she's like, son, I'm sorry, I love you. And I said, I know you love me, Mom. I love you. And I get it, So for me, it was about how do I, stop those generational traumas from happening, and not just for me, because I seen it throughout my neighborhood. I seen it throughout my family. I seen it, where I grew up in San Bernardino, California, where, drugs and gangs is rampant there. And so it was something that, how can I climb out of this? First of all, how do I heal from the trauma? How do I overcome these challenges, these barriers? How do I get out of the system? How do I overcome the addictions that I have, taken on because of that pain, because of that trauma, because of that neglect? I found myself homeless at 14 years old, addicted to meth, involved in a lot of ugly things. And, I'm really blessed that some mentors reached out to me and, really gave me an opportunity. And that's where that credible messengers comes from, because those mentors were previously gang members. They were previously involved in that life, and so they were believable for me, because someone like me who was told you're going to spend your life in prison, you're never going to, live to see 18. Before I was 18, I was told that often, and I believed it, right? And I was like, yeah, that's my life, right? That's what I was dealt. But when someone that came from where you came from and comes and says, you don't have to die in the streets, you don't have to die in prison, like, there's a way out. That's so uplifting, and that gives you that hope, right? That you pull onto, and you pull yourself out from that. And obviously it's a journey, but that's where my passion comes from. I've seen a lot of families lose a lot. I've lost a lot. Loved ones to gang violence, shot, stabbed, OD'd, all of those things. So, that was very painful. And I wanted to say, how do I get upstream on that? How do I provide resources to communities so that they don't have to go down those paths? There are always exits from that road, from that highway, right? That pipeline to prison. How do I provide those exits for them and the support they need to stay on the right path and heal as well?
That's so powerful. And every time I hear a story, it's so inspiring. And there are many elements that I want to dive into today. But, one of the things, and I'm sure you get asked this often, but as you mentioned, there were many people around you in some variation of the same circumstances, right? And you had those mentors, those people, those credible mentors who you said, I believe this is possible. But it must also take a lot of internal willpower and strength. What would you credit with being traits of yourselves that sort of helped you get on a different path?
That's a powerful question, because, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? And so it's like, was there something inside me all along that said, hey, I don't belong here? Or was I inspired? I would say that I attribute to my grandfather first, right? So my grandfather took me from my mom when I was really young because of the lifestyle she lived as a drug dealer and a gang member and those things. And, oftentimes she would take me and my brother back, and we would be back in that violent environment. And there came a point when I was 13, and my grandpa said, you're coming with me, because I was already dropped out of school. I was like just not doing well. I left my mom at 11 years old. It was the first time I was like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving, And so my grandpa said, come live with me and I'll put you back in school. And, he was a good man, him and my grandmother. And so he taught me manners. He taught me respect. He taught me leadership, just from modeling it. And he was well respected. Sadly, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do good. He put me back in school. I was like trying to get good grades for him. I didn't even care about friends at that point. I would run home to like see my grandpa and hang out with him, because I didn't have him. My dad never showed up. I never met my dad. My stepdad was a violent man and in and out of jail, prison, was very abusive. So having my grandfather show me that love from a man, it was just different. Like, wow, and one day I woke up and got ready, went to school, and my brother picked me up from school, and right away I knew, like, they're like, your brother's here, to get you. And I'm like, what? Not good. So my grandfather had a heart attack and passed away when I was just turned 14. So that was like, my hope just died. I was like, no way. The only person that loves me and will protect me and provide for me is dead, And that was so hard to take. And I attempted to commit suicide, and I found that's when I went heavy into drugs and into meth, and I didn't know what meth would do to you. I didn't know, like, that was like a new drug, when I was growing up, because I grew up with heroin addicts, right? So heroin addicts, we knew, like, you don't do that. We seen what happened to the previous generation, but meth was like different. I knew it, I was horrible and a disaster. I flipped out, lost my mind a couple times on that drug. But I say all that to say, my grandfather left a mark. Like he left a real mark and gave me something to aspire to. And actually, if you in my story, sometimes I talk about it where when I was looking for purpose, like when I got out of the system and I'm like, okay, I'm off probation. I want to do good. I'm gonna do something great with my life. I'm done with this. I need this healing journey, and I went on a big old healing journey. But I was like, what do I become? Like, who am I? You know, if I'm not a gangster, and I'm not, but then what am I? And, you know, I seen that my grandfather, I found a newspaper clipping of him when he started his nonprofit, and right after his 2 sons were shot in the head and murdered, and instead of being angry and retaliating, he wanted to be the solution. And, you know, that was like my inspiration. And, you know, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be like my grandpa. And, you know, surprisingly, his name's Ramon Ramos, right? So you kind of take that on. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to be like my grandpa. Like, I'm going to carry the torch. I'm going to carry the legacy. Like, I'm going to take this on. And that's why I started The Exception.
That is amazing. And what an incredible legacy he is living through you. And you're truly changing lives. You know, in that story, you mentioned about, you know, seeing what could be, right? And being on a path. Yet some critical things happen that were completely out of your control. And one of the things that we often talk about, but maybe doesn't get talked about enough when we're educating our students, you have however many students you have in the classroom, however many, if you're a guidance counselor, you know, hundreds underneath you, if you're a principal, all the students at your school, they all come with their story, right? They all have their version of whatever that might be, like you had. And so what would you say to somebody who's working with students? And it can be in any, you know, maybe it's in a school, maybe it's in an administrator position, maybe it is with a community-based organization. But to be open to hearing those stories, right? And like maybe not judging, kind of how do we meet them where they are? What would you say to somebody who's working with our youth?
Yeah, I love that. And I get the opportunity to do that. I actually teach in middle schools, high schools. I do training for teacher staff on like trauma-informed care. And that's where, you know, you understand that we're all people first. Like, we're all people first, you know. We like to put labels on people and put jackets on them. I remember, you know, when I was in elementary in 6th grade, and the principal said, you got a jacket already, and when you get to junior high, everyone knows you're bad, you know, so they're waiting for you. And I'm like, wow, I already have a jacket. And so oftentimes we kind of just categorize people. And maybe it makes life simpler for us, but life is not so, you know, black and white. Life is dynamic. People are dynamic. People are always changing. And when you look at these young people that have their story, some hide it better than others, right? But at the same time, we need to dig that up, you know, if we want to really serve our young people. And to me, that's what leadership is. It's serving. At its core, in my opinion, leadership is influence. To influence people is to serve them, really, and, you know, to build them up. And if we're going to build them up, then we need to meet them where they're at. And we need to know, like, okay, they want to do better, but they're carrying this load, this trauma, this weight. They need healing. They need growth. They need resources. And it could be, I mean, I work with youth that are at Promise and in the schools. And so you'd be surprised, you know, I was teaching at a middle school, and a kid comes in my class, and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get arrested here today, right? Because I missed court, and my dad was drunk and didn't get up. And, you know, and then his public defender walks in and is like, you're not getting arrested today. And I'm like, man, this kid is 12 years old, 13 years old, having to deal with the stress of, am I going to get arrested at school because of some court date my dad didn't take me to, right? So that's just an example of, like, you never know. I had one high school kid come in my class, and he said, I haven't been home in days because I'm running from the cops, but I came here because I wanted to talk to you. And I told him, look, we got to take you to court, first of all, but we'll help you, but I get why you're running. You're afraid. You don't know who's going to help you. So those are just stories of saying, look, these people are dealing with a lot, right? And when I was in school, they would always say, well, what's going on at home? I was taught not to tell anybody what was going on at home, because then my parents are getting taken away. That even if I loved them or liked them or not, they were still my parents. They were still who gave me a roof, and so sometimes we just got to dig a little deeper, care a little more, look past the facade, understand that people are humans first, and whatever they're doing, however they're acting, is a result of something else. It's a byproduct. There's a deeper root that we have to get to.
That's so true. The analogy of the jacket is so powerful, because it's like, how many jackets, how many weights are people carrying? How many labels do we have on them, even by, middle school? Imagine by high school. Yeah. Then try to, even if they could even think of higher education or certificate programs, the workplace, right? Because it doesn't stop until somebody, like maybe the mentors you had, your grandfather's influence, them sort of on a different path, to see that there is a different path, right?
Yeah. And I think we need more mentors. There's a lot of people that, even if they have parents, oftentimes don't feel comfortable talking to their parents about certain things, or, so I think having mentors is just so important, having true leaders in the community. And I feel like there is a lack of leadership. Honestly, good leadership. I mean, there's always bad leadership. Leadership's everywhere. But
lots of leadership.
Yeah, there's titles, and then there's, people that influence people, but not always in the right ways. And so I hope that anyone listening to this would say, how can I be a mentor? How can I be a leader, a servant to somebody in need that's around me? It could be in my family, could be in my school, could be in my community, but where can I chip in? That's what this whole community is about, that we all need each other, right? Nobody's an island unto themselves. We're all connected somehow. And if we don't start helping each other, then we're going to find ourselves in an even worse situation.
No, you're exactly right. And that's actually a really good segue into some very powerful work that you are doing. And one of the connection points you have with Riverside County Office of Education and our students, but there's the CBO Alliance. And, can you tell our listeners a little bit about, like, what does that mean, CBO Alliance here in Riverside County? But maybe more importantly than what it's about, tell us what makes it so different in how we're serving our residents.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that. So the CBO Alliance stands for the Community-Based Organization Alliance. It's a collective of nonprofit organizations that come together to share resources, to close gaps in services, to advocate for underserved communities, for policy change, whatever we can do to better our communities as a whole. It's all about social services. We have community partners as well. So maybe they're not CBOs. For example, RCOE is a community partner. So Riverside County Probation is a community partner. So there's partners that we work together with to try and close those gaps. And I look at it like these young people and families, they need both. They do need the county agencies that are providing a lot of these support and these resources, but they also need those community-based organizations, people that are grassroots, out there meeting them when the county's closed, because they don't work every Friday and they get off at 5. We don't. We're there when they call. We're there on the weekend. We're there in the nighttime. We're there to say, man, I got a call the other day. A kid that we were working with got shot in the back. And, you know, it's heartbreaking. And right away, we're on the phones. You know, how do we help? How do we support this youth? You know, so those are things that I think the partnership brings. The CBO Alliance brings a bridge, right? And that's why we started.
Mm-hmm.
So we started in January of 2024.
Wow.
And so it's fairly new. It's exciting. It's growing fast. But we started because there was a disconnect between county, you know, specifically I was working with Riverside County Probation Department, and there was a disconnect between the county and the CBOs. And so they said, how do we close the gap there? How do we work together? And so, you know, I got together with some CBOs that were friends of mine and co-partners, co-laborers. And I'm like, we're not going to have a meeting. We're going to start a movement. Like, they just gave us an opportunity. We're starting a movement.
Love that.
You know, I don't like doing things small. Like, if we're going to do something, we're doing it all the way. So, you know, we started a movement, and we've been able to really heal a lot of the relationships between the county and the community-based organizations. And that's benefiting who? That's benefiting these youth, these families. Now there's money that was stuck with the county that's flowing out to community, millions of dollars that have just been awarded to CBOs because of the work that we're doing. So that's what we're about. We started here in Riverside County, but we're already in San Bernardino County. We've been being asked to go all the way up to Sacramento and all across the state. So we'll be expanding, you know, coming to a county near you, right? But we want to keep this work going, and we're building a model. You know, it's not just for here. We want to build a model. What does success look like? What does changing culture look like? What does creating healthy communities look like? Sometimes people think that's too big. And when I first started doing this work, they're like, you're thinking too big. Like, that's crazy. It's too broad. You can't do that. Like, why not? Who says? Let's try. I'm going to try it. You know, you guys step aside if you don't like it. You know, we'll see what happens. But, you know, it's caught on. And now we have the attention of the state. We have the attention of some national organizations that are saying, hey, what is this model you're building? And how do we be a part of that? So it's really exciting work where the Alliance is right now.
I love what you said, though. It's a movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an energy.
Yes.
And you're seeing the change. And then I can just share that we were so fortunate and glad to host the June meeting of the CBO Alliance. And I remember thinking, oh, it's a Friday.
I know.
Summertime. Like, I
It's
hope
hard
some
to
people
get.
show up.
It's
I hope
hard to
some
get
people
your
show
building.
up.
Let me just say that. That was
Oh,
the
yeah.
only time it was available. So we're
That's
like,
actually
we'll do
probably
it.
true. Our
Yeah.
conference centers are really
Yeah,
hot
like,
commodity.
it's a hot commodity. It's me.
But, you know, I'm like, oh, man, I just hope some people show up because
Yeah.
we're going to give our all, but we're spreading the word.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked over, and that room was filled, packed
Mm-hmm.
with hundreds of people with so much energy.
Yes.
And I thought, you brought these people together. Like, this is going to create change.
Yeah.
And that was just one day, you know, and you're
Right.
doing this all day, every day kind of thing, you know? So that was just amazing. And do you have, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you share an example, and big, small, they all matter, of a win maybe that you've already seen? Like you mentioned, it's not even 2 years in the making, but you're already creating this movement. Do you have any examples of like a success story, if you will?
Sheesh, there's a few. I would say I'll highlight two of them that I think are really
That's
exciting.
great.
One of them is that prior to us doing this work, for credible messengers, lived experience mentors, to get into the juvenile halls to try and work with our young people, there was a 36-page application, right? That my grandma, who's never gotten a ticket, probably couldn't pass herself. I don't think anyone was really allowed. And so I just kept kind of pounding the table like, hey, that's too crazy. Like, how are we going to help our youth if we can't get in the doors? And we looked at Los Angeles and said, like, well, you know, because what I do is I always go look, well, what's going on outside? Like, you know, let's see what everyone else is doing, and
Yes.
where do we stack up to that? And so I seen like they had a 1-pager, right? So I had told Riverside County, and they said, well, we're not LA. I said, I get it, right? We're not LA. I'm not trying to take you to a one-pager, but can we come down from 36?
Even if we meet
Can
in the
we-
middle,
yeah,
we're making
I
some
don't
good
like
progress.
just help me here because we're trying to help our people. And they called me all excited about a month later and said, you ain't gonna believe this. We got it down to 3-page application. And now credible messengers are going into the facilities, mentoring our youth, helping them, change their lives. So that's a win to me. That's a powerful win. Really
That is
excited
powerful.
about that.
That's amazing.
And that's not that's the work of a lot of people. So I'm not saying, just the Alliance or just me. There's a lot of people involved in this change, but we championed a lot of that movement. And then the other thing I would say is being able to unite the CBOs. That was difficult, and it
Really?
still is. Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of the biggest problems with doing like alliance coalition building is CBOs are oftentimes in competition. Yeah, so they're competing for money. They're competing for clients. They don't want to share information, secrets. I mean, they're
Amazing.
trying to keep their ground, their contracts, whatever it is. And that's where I came along and was like, I just think we'd do better together. I don't call me crazy, but I'm tired of, fighting over $1 and a client, and honestly, I to become this position, I exempted myself from $20 million that was sitting in a contingency fund that we fought to get released in a good way. But I told them I'll exempt myself. Like I won't ask for a dime from that. Wow. That'll go to the CBOs. Just let me get in there and do the work, right?
That's amazing.
And so, that's what we did. And just last month, the 11 CBOs got awarded that that millions and millions of dollars are going to come out over the next 5 years. And it was a long time coming. It was a lot of work. And I'm not trying to take credit here by myself. There's all kinds of people involved in this work. But we were there at the forefront. And, we just did the kickoff. So you're going to see a bunch of new commercials and promo coming out about those CBOs and how they're helping the community. But those are wins to me. Those are big wins. And that's just the beginning.
This is absolutely just the beginning. And like you said, I mean, you're going region wide, you're going statewide, you're going national, right?
Exactly.
So,
That's
but you brought up some really, I mean, there were real hurdles. And so that's why, because, when you mentioned, oh, this is the model, this is actually relatively new. My thought is, how did this not happen before? But those are real hurdles that people have to get past, but they need a champion, and you're such an incredible leader. And I know you're giving the credit to so many, which who all deserve it, but really amazing work that you're doing. You're also doing some partnership work, and I think that idea of partnership, which I'd like to dive into a little bit more, but you actually in partnership with RCOE and many others in the county, had an event specific to students and families.
Yeah.
And so, when we got that call, hey, let's hop on a meeting because this is something I've been really wanting to do. I'm not going to lie. I think some people were like, what's the vision here? Like, are people going to show up? And like, are we going to really do this? And you know what? We did it. Mm-hmm. And there were so many students and families. The programming is amazing, but it was Raising the Future. Yeah. And it was so successful. They're like, oh, wait, you did that. We did it in downtown Riverside. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to other regions in the county. Tell us about the Raising the Future and why you really wanted to bring all these partners to serving our youth.
Yeah, and I love that you said how there was like a little bit of like, what is this? And I feel like that's the story of my life. Like,
sorry, that was really vulnerable and full disclosure.
No, I love it.
We stayed in the room. We stayed in the room.
No, I credit you guys. You stuck with me. And shout out to Dr. McCarty because she helped me so much with that event.
She's amazing.
We would not be able to do it without her. And yeah, so it was a vision that came from the beginning. I always dubbed myself like Robin Hood, like, take from the rich, give to the poor. And and I've just had that spirit, to be honest, since I was young. I mean, I've always tried to give the shirt off my back. And, when there's resources to give, I know that people need them. And so I've had several throughout the years, like resource fairs or, where we do workshops, and I just invite all my partners. Everything's free. You can't sell nothing, but you can show up. I've done it in partnership with Boys and Girls Clubs. I did one at San Bernardino High School. And so what we would do is have, give away shoes, food, clothes, hygiene packs, everything you can think of. But I always wanted it to be like bigger. I'm like, bigger. No, we need the county involved. We need all the agencies. We need all the foundations, and I was always for me, it's about modeling something, right? I like to do what I say. Like, I don't like to be the person that just talks about it. Like, I just do the work, and then you can see what I mean then. And so this Raising the Future was an opportunity because it was that big picture event that I had been dreaming about for some time. And I told probation, I'm like, let's do an event where we show the power of our unity, where we show the community what happens when we get together. And we'll call it Raising the Future, right? So they're like, yes, let's go. Like, let's pull everybody together. So that's how it kind of started out. And you were a part of one of those very first meetings. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Dominique's here. We're going to get this. We're going somewhere.
I'm like, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But you had the vision. You were amazing. Yes.
Thank you. It was awesome. And then RCC was involved. So many, Dr. Grayson was a big part of that. Right. And so, the event happened. There was over 500 people there. We gave out over $10,000 in scholarships and prizes. There were 16 different workshops. It was just a day of fun. Dr. McCarty was dancing. I was like, we're having so much fun with it. I felt like I was just giving stuff away all day. I'm like, I had a big screen TV on the stage. I had a PS5. I had all this stuff. I'm like, we're giving this all away today. Stay tuned here. And so actually, Supervisor Perez in the 4th District, he heard about it. And so his staff had showed up to check it out. And they said, we need to have this over here in the Coachella Valley. So coming soon, right, to Palm Desert, we'll be doing another one. But it's just the beginning. They want to have them every year. Right. They're already asking for it also in the 3rd District. So I think it's just going to be a series of events. They're community-based. Over 50 partners were involved, nonprofits and county agencies in that event, and it's just going to get bigger from here. So it's really exciting.
It's amazing work. And I think, like you said, you're building that momentum, and then each thing tops the next, right? Because then somebody says, well, I want to be involved in that, right? But, you were at the core of so much of it, and it's really impressive. There's one more partnership that's really also changing lives and working on that systemic change that we actually talked about at the beginning. So kind of come full circle before we close. And that's the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council. So JJCC, because I'm like, I never get that right.
Yeah. There's 1,000 acronyms in this world.
I know, right? But I'm like, we are going to say the full thing because, we never expect people listening to know them all. We barely know them all. But the JJCC, and then the ad hoc committee that was created. And tell me about that and how all of those people at the table can truly create systemic change.
Yeah, this is some of the most exciting work that I get to be a part of. And this is an ad hoc committee was formed because the JJCC is a committee that provides solutions for our youth and family that are justice involved, right? So their whole role is to support the youth justice involved. How do we get them resources for, everything from prevention to reentry? So across the whole spectrum, all the different phases. How do we help them? And so they said we need a working group because the JJCC is under the Brown Act. They can only meet periodically in a public setting. Really hard to get things done like that. And so the ad hoc committee was formed. It's made up of several county agencies, several CBOs. RCOE has a seat on there, which I love working with you guys on all this stuff. And so our job was to like really investigate, why is there $20 million stuck in this account? What do we do with that? You know, where are the challenges,
Yeah.
whether it's in policy, whether it's in culture, whatever it is, we need to find it. So it's like a task force.
Love
And
that.
so I was given the opportunity to chair that committee. And so right off the bat, I told them, like, you already know I don't waste time. You know, first of all, this is a volunteer position. So I'm like, we got to get some stuff done. If I'm going to be here, then we do something for real. So we got to work and we started like uncovering everything and saying, you know what? Here's the issues. We created a 3-year strategic plan together that got adopted by JJCC. We're midway through that now. And so again, that's the fun work where we're going upstream, what I was talking about earlier. You know, we're not just looking about how can we save the youth. We want to help everybody, but how do we prevent? You know, how do we stop
Yes.
youth from getting in the justice system? How do we prevent some of these senseless killings that are happening, or, you know, senseless acts, you know, kids getting addicted to drugs so young? Like, how do we stop that? And I know that sounds like, oh, it can't be stopped. I don't know. I'm crazy. I believe that we have power. Like, as humans, we have some great power. And if we get together and we start putting our minds together, like,
That's right.
there's nothing we can't accomplish. That's how I believe. And, you know, that's what the ad hoc is doing. And so I'm really happy to be a part of it. I told them, you guys got 3 years from me, and then I'm going to Hawaii. No, I told I'm retiring after this.
No, thank you
No,
on that
no,
one.
that's-
But take a
that's-
trip there, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
I said, you got 3 years. That was my commitment. We're halfway through that. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm starting to consult, like I said, the state and some others. So I want to try and build something that we could spread and help more counties, more youth, more people. I want to leave a legacy. I want to do something that, you know, when my time's done here and I go to sleep, you know, that I can really feel and say at the end, like, I made this world a better place. And, you know, I try to wake up every day with that energy, to be honest, and just say, like, today I'm going to, even if it's smiling at someone or, you know, giving them something, however I can. And you got to understand, I survived a lot, right? People say, how do you can't do it. Yeah, you can. When you've gone through what I've gone through, every day is a blessing. I survived. I'm here. And so, yeah, I'm happy. You know, I'm blessed to do this work.
And those what you days are real big acts, right? But that smile, you always talk about it, like, you don't know what they're going through. Speaking of, like, bringing it back to our students, right? When they walk in that class, maybe just a smile, somebody at the gate when they're coming through, you know, onto campus, like, just knowing their name.
Yes.
Saying it's good to see you here. I'm happy you're here. Holding the door for someone when we're out and about, right? Like, it is those little things that can truly make a difference. And if they fuel you to do all the amazing things that you do, then my goodness, it's all so worth it, because you are just, I mean, you are changing the world. And what a legacy. It's so beautiful how you mentioned about having your grandfather's name, because, oh man, he's proud of you, I'm sure, you know, so it's just so beautiful. You know, we could probably talk for way longer. I could hear your stories forever.
I'm hearing the cues.
No. You know what? That's the beauty. That's the beauty of a, you know, digital platform. But, you know, as we do bring this to a close, I'd love for you to maybe share with those who are listening, you know, it could be parents, educators, you know, our students. What would you share with them for someone who might think, you know, they're looking at people in the jackets, right? They're bringing some preconceived notions with them when they interact with people. And that might be in the workplace, in the classroom, might be when they're just out walking the streets or at a store, right? And they're maybe letting some of those things that we're visually seeing kind of cloud the person, right? Seeing the human.
Yeah.
What would you say to them to maybe just have them consider changing that mindset?
Yeah, I think it's always going to start with self-reflection. You know, we oftentimes project And,
good.
you know, so I think what I would say is first look inside, right? You might be hurt still about something that you're projecting, right? And it could be about a specific population. You have a preconceived notion that people that dress like this or look like this are like this, you know, and all that comes from our own upbringing, our own, you know, kind of belief system that we were indoctrinated with. And oftentimes people don't challenge that, even in themselves. And, you know, in the program Reboot that we have, that's what it's all about. That's what it took for me to change. Me. Let me stop blaming everyone else. Let me stop pointing fingers. Let me stop judging the world, and let me first look inside and say what's hurting in me, because hurt people, and healed people heal people. And, you know, so I would say, like, if you're doing that, let's look inside, say, hey, how can I heal? And then when you feel healed, you're going to naturally want to heal others. And oftentimes we do that because we're suffering. Our cup is empty. And so we're taking it out on the world. And so I would just say, look for ways to fill your cup, you know, because the work I do, it's an overflow. I don't do it, you know, out of an empty cup. I could not. You know, I make sure that I'm getting the healing I need, meditating, doing the things that fill me up, so that when I go out into the world, I show up full of life, full of love, full of all those things that I want to see in the world. And so I would hope that people would do that also.
That's beautiful. It's inspirational, but it's actually very tangible, right? These are real things that we can each do every day. And so thank you for sharing that. You know, it's something that we do before the end of each episode. And I didn't give you any warning about this. So,
Okay.
so we're just going to go. You know, if anyone
Improv.
can handle
Totally.
it, I feel like you got this, you
Okay,
know?
all
So we have, this is the torch. And so we have
Okay.
the fire round.
Ooh,
okay. So
okay.
we're going there, right?
It's hot.
That's it. I know, we're feeling it. So it's going to be 3 questions.
Okay.
And ideally, I mean, I don't know how many people have actually stuck to this, but
Okay.
you'd answer in like 1 word to 1 sentence.
Okay.
Right?
Jeez,
So
that's the tough part.
I know
Okay,
you got
let's
this.
go.
I
Let's
have so much faith in you. So the first 2 questions we ask everybody,
Okay.
and then the third one specific to you. So,
Okay.
who was one of your most impactful teachers or educational influences? And maybe it doesn't have to come in a school setting.
I would say, I only can say 1 sentence, so I'll just say.
You do you. Okay. Don't worry.
Well, there was a counselor that was a drug counselor that at a school, but he was my mom's drug counselor. And so when he seen me, he was like, I know your parents, like I counsel them too, or I have. And I'm like, oh shoot, so you know me. And he's like, yeah, like I know where you come from. And so, you know, he himself was Hispanic, so he looked like me, and he said, hey, you know, I want to really help you. So I don't want to take a long time, so I'll just stop it there. But he really impacted me because I felt like he cared, and maybe that came from, and that's what it really comes down to, right? Who cares?
Yes.
Who loves you? And there's a few other teachers that were like my favorites. Nobody could mess with them because they're like, Ramon's okay. So I'm like, nobody better not talk back to a teacher. Miss Brugaletti, shout out to you.
I love that.
Yeah, my social studies teacher too.
Well, I hope she's listening.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite books?
Ooh, shoot! I love books. Yeah, so
Nice.
I'm on Audible now, so I've listened to 100 books, right? Because you can listen all day. I'm gonna give you 2 books for this
Okay.
if I can. The Master Key System, right? By I want to say Charles Haanel. It was written in the early 1900s, and this is like the source of where you got Napoleon Hill's Philosophy for Success, where you got The Secret. All of that started with that book. So if you want to go back, look at the Master Key System. And then for right now, the work that I'm doing, my favorite book, it's my third time, is Upstream. It's called Upstream, and it's about creating systemic change and really changing systems. And there's so much in that book that is so powerful about the work that we're doing. And so I would say those are my two right now.
I love that. Those are good. I have a feeling we're gonna have some people either
Look 'em
downloading
up.
or
Look
checking
'em
those out
up.
of the
Please
library.
do.
That's so good. And so this one's specific to you. What is one of your favorite stories of where you impacted a student or an individual in your life?
Wow. That's a really tough one. Well, first of all, because I'm not the kind of guy that like talks about me impacting people like
I
that.
know,
I
but
try
you
not
do.
to.
I
I tried
know.
not to do that today. So that's hard.
You or a team.
Yeah. I mean, we help a lot of people, and that's, I can't really just say one person. Honestly, I've had the privilege of training hundreds of leaders, and I've spoken to over 100,000 people throughout the country, and I've, done my best to help them all as much as I can. I've heard countless stories of, people write me or they come up to me and tell me like how their lives have changed, or, all the time. Yesterday I was doing a training and someone showed up and they're like, I've been going to all your workshops, and my life is different, and those are just the beautiful things. But I think the thing I'm most proud of is the macro work, just because I love seeing the people that I'm influencing and impacting, but knowing that this work is helping thousands of people and for generations, for decades. I don't know. I love that kind of work, and that's what I'm most proud of and love doing the most.
That's incredible. And you are certainly making an impact now, but it will be for years and generations to come. Thank you so very, very much for being here, Ramon. You're such a powerful example of transformation, but the kind of transformation that inspires everyone around you to transform for the better. And so what a gift. Thank you for spending your time with us and for everything you do for our students and families throughout the county and the region. We're so grateful to have had you on.
Thank you, Dominique. You're amazing yourself. RCOE, I appreciate you guys having me on. And Dominique's the best. I'll give a shout out. I see her all the great events with your big smile, really lighting up the room. And thank you for who you are and what you do also. I appreciate you.
That means the world. And thank you for listening. The Torch is a monthly series from the Riverside County Office of Education, so make sure to follow us on your favorite streaming platform, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We are honored to share these important discussions so we can all support our families, educators, and everyone passionate about delivering the very best for our students.